Hello again. Today is video number 4. It is currently Monday, January 6th, around 9 o'clock p.m. Lately we have had torrential snow that has actually got me canceled from work, so that was really nice. And I'm kind of bored today. I worked out and I did my usual stuff, did my diet, all that stuff. But I figured I would get on here and make a video. One that I planned a little bit ago, but I was just kind of gathering the pieces of what I wanted to say. So this video, I want to talk about the ironic tragedy of life. And just for some context, something that is commonly referred to would be ironic tragedies. So things that we would commonly think of for ironic tragedies would be something like Romeo and Juliet, right? You have something that's a story that maybe will progress how you believe it should progress, where starstruck lovers, people fall in love at the end, and they're supposed to be happily ever after. Obviously, we know that's not how that works, right? We know that stuff ends up happening at the end and they both die. That would be an example of ironic tragedy. However, the ironic tragedy of life is a little different. So just for a quick definition, the ironic tragedy of life was written by Kierkegaard, who was a philosopher, and this is the idea that life must be lived forward, but can only be understood in the reverse. So once again, life must be lived forward, as is linear, time is linear, but we can only understand the things that we have done, our past experiences, when looking back at them, right? Meaning, as we go through life, we kind of go through it a little blindly, right? Or the only things that we can know for certain are experiences of our own in the past and we learn from them, or experiences of others. However, I feel like many times in life, we maybe take experiences of others and we hear them, but we don't enact them, right? That happens very often in life, especially from elders. They try to tell us, like, don't do this, don't do that. Well, I think part of life and part of growing up is experiencing life for yourself, right? So it's hard to take people's lessons and listen to them. I mean, really, like, that's happened for me throughout life. And I think an undertone of this theory is uncertainty is scary, right? Uncertainty about the world, about what we're going to do, about everything. Personally, I think uncertainty always just scared me before I was in a relationship, right? Uncertainty of, will I ever be in a relationship? Will I ever find the one? Will I ever get married? Will any of this ever happen, right? Will I ever have children? Will I ever do any of that stuff? And then it happened, and I learned from it, and I gained experience, and I gained a lot from it. And I think some of the things that I gained from it could only be understood now that it's gone, right? I would have never been able to comprehend these lessons or comprehend what I got out of it if I had not lost it, or if I had not looked back and said, oh my gosh, this is what I learned, right? So I think for me too, a big thing that I have learned is in life, for me at least, my biggest ironic tragedy probably is, I've talked about this in other videos, but obviously I feel the extremes of life, right? I feel the extremes of happiness, right? Happiness is the sun. Happiness is flowers on a beautiful spring day for me. Sadness isn't the rain, it's a tsunami, it's a hurricane. But, that's kind of an ironic tragedy that I learned about myself. But I think I've also learned something about myself in the ironic tragedy sense, is that as I've progressed through life, I've always felt this maybe deep misunderstanding with myself, or I always felt like I'm not where I should be, or I need to be doing these other things. And I think when I was younger, much of that came from comparison, right? And as we know, comparison is the thief of joy. I think when I was in high school, I would just constantly compare myself, right? And I really made an effort to not compare myself when I got to college. But I think what happened inversely is I no longer was comparing myself, but I was comparing myself to me right now, or I was comparing myself to the past me. So if I was in a bad spot now and I compared to myself to something better, it made me even worse. If I was in a good spot now and I compared myself to something bad in the past, it made me feel better, right? And I think the problem sometimes with me, and this is something that I definitely recognize, and I think Kierkegaard's theory kind of fits this is that I feel like I have to keep constantly reminding myself that I'm enough, right? I keep having to remind myself that what I'm doing is enough, that there is no audience that I'm living for. There is no divine goal in which humans are supposed to reach, and there is no outlined potential for what I'm supposed to do. And I think what I found is in having to tell myself that I'm always enough, I always feel like I need to be doing more, right? And I think this is something that I've only learned as I got out of college and I lost all these friends and my relationship ended. Is I always feel like I need to be doing more, right? I always feel like I need to be running 1 more mile, be working out for 1 more hour, be getting 10,000 more steps, right? More, become better, become something above myself, right? And I think part of that is pushing the needle, but I think for me, part of it is, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's some deep underlying thing. Maybe this is how my parents were. I don't know. But I think going off of the ironic tragedy of life and looking back at this and understanding the things in the reverse, I think I can say confidently that I am proud of where I'm at, but I still feel like I need to be doing more to where I want to go. I know it's a little off track, but I guess some food for thought for the watch back. And when I look at this later, if it's in many years or something, but yeah, I don't know. I think I have a letter that I wrote on November 31st of 2024 that I would like to read, that I think kind of resembles the ironic tragedy of life for me. And I think this letter is really important because it would signify a great transition in my life of kind of accepting how things are and accepting that uncertainty is scary, and that when you have things and you lose things, that does not mean those things are always bad, right? That does not mean those things are a waste. So I think I want to read that letter now, and after that I want to talk about it and I want to say some other things. So like I said, the letter is November 31st, 2024, and I'm talking about a very specific person in it, but I will leave out the names because I don't talk to this person anymore, and I feel like that is only fair to do. I should not include names. All right. I do still miss her, but I think I miss having someone to talk to, someone to do something with. A built-in best friend is a feeling I wish to experience again. I can say, though I had made growth, I no longer yearn for her. The silence is no longer deafening. The constant rumination has stopped, something that we had talked about in the first video. However, I still find myself here and there thinking of her, dreaming of her. These are all very true things that still happen. Thinking of calling her, seeing how life is. With these feelings, a couple of sorrows felt. A sorrow knowing no matter what I do, I won't get back what I had. So no, I don't know if I will get her back, but I don't need that person. I need to find my new person. I didn't fall in love with her for the idea, but rather what we shared and how we felt about each other. Everything we had was perfect. We truly had an invisible string between us, and it was cut by us as well. I feel I'm Seb, and she was Mia. We needed each other to see what we could become, but we couldn't be together to become it. It just wasn't in the cards for us, and I think I'm okay with this. As I have become a better human being, running, lifting, playing tennis, learning pickleball, doing well in school, I feel like I've got so much hate and I don't know why. I don't know what I must do better. I do know that I want to find my missing person. I don't chase, I want to attract them. What is meant for me will find me. I will get another invisible string. They are out there, and I just need to find them. I love my life. It's working out. It was real for us. I think something that's very important to highlight that I personally see growth in is recognizing that this thing was perfect, but it was momentary. Thus, maybe its ending showed its imperfection, right? And I think another part of that I really like is that it was real for us. Because I think when all of these things happened, when I, graduated and I kind of lost my friends and lost her and lost all these things, I had this underlying feeling that all of these things that I had experienced and all of these things that I had felt were simply real for me only, right? They were only real for me. The love I shared was only real for me. The friends I had, it was only real for me. They never cared how I thought they felt or how I felt. It was all of it was only real for me. And I think the problem is that's a very egotistical way to look at it. But I think in heartbreak, in sorrow, ego shines because all we know is who we are, right? All I know is who I am. I have no confirmatory evidence that anyone else feels any sort of way. But I think as time has passed and as I've looked in the reverse and I've understood the reverse, I think that's a key word. I've understood the reverse. I've seen photos, I've read letters, I've read through texts, I've seen videos that confirmed to me, yes, it was real. It was really real. It was so real that it was there. It was in my arms. It was in me, in my soul. Like, it was in my eyes. It was in everything, right? And I think no matter how much I try to convince myself that these things in the reverse are false or these things couldn't have been real or they couldn't have happened, it's just not true. It's just not true, right? And I think something that this letter kind of highlights, and this is, obviously this is a letter that I will never send, but I think something that it really, really highlights is it doesn't matter how much or how often people hurt each other, and it doesn't matter how much heartbreak you experience, and even if it wasn't pain, right? I wouldn't even say that my relationship had a lot of hurt in it or my friendships had a lot of hurt in them. But I think what I've learned is loving things, loving people, loving places, loving ideas is never a waste, right? You can't waste those things because you did it, right? And I think if you do something and you enjoy it, you genuinely enjoy it, how can it ever be a waste, right? Even if it's something that you no longer have, even if it's something you no longer have, I just don't see how it can be a waste. I don't. And like I said in the letter, the yearning has stopped, the rumination has stopped. But there are times where random memories, random ideas, kind of just pop in your head and you're like, I wonder what this would be like. I wonder how they are. I wonder what they're doing. And I think that's important because if you didn't feel that way and you just moved on like that and, you just jump for the next person, you jump to the next set of friends, you jump to the next thing, then maybe it wasn't real, right? Maybe those things you feel are not how they were, right? Because I think there's something that's almost beautiful in the silence, and there's beautiful in the suffering, and there's beautiful in the pain, because for me, does looking back and living life forward and then in the reverse, I see and understand things and I'm like, holy hell, that hurt a lot, right? Heartbreak hurts. Does that mean loving people hurts? I don't think so. If anything, I think hurting validates that there was love, right? And same with friends. Does having friends and then losing them and then looking back and saying, wow, that, I miss these people. That really hurts. I wonder what I did. Again, I think that validates that maybe the things that you had were real, right? Maybe it was real for us. It was real for both parties. Maybe it's no longer real, right? Maybe it's I had the string and they met, and then like all strings, some strings just run out, right? And I think something that I constantly see is when people reference any sort of heartbreak or they reference any sort of traumatic event of breaking up with somebody, losing friends, and they say, well, those people have to heal and maybe they'll come back. And I think a common thing that people always think is, well, if they come back, you shouldn't let them in your life because you already know the ending to the book, right? And I think it's very putrid to equate a relationship or a friendship to something so simple as a book, right? Even though some books can be very complex, I understand that. But I think there's so much more than that, right? This is life we're talking about. Life is not a book, right? Experiences are a book, maybe, but life is your life. So maybe you know the ending to the book, but I don't even know that it is a book. And if we are going to call it a book, just for ease of access, I almost feel like people coming back into your life is an entirely new book. It's not a new chapter. It's an entirely new book. Like, how can you say, I already know how this is going to end? To me, that tells me you've made no growth and you've made nothing new. Because what I talk about in the letter, and I think this is important to this ironic tragedy of life, is what you realize over time is you don't miss the current person. You miss the person that you were with, that you knew. You aren't the same person that knew that person. They aren't the same person, right? So how could you ever say it's the same book when you're completely different? At least I'd hope you're completely different. I'm completely different. I don't even know who I was 6 months ago. I have no idea. Because I'm completely different, right? I always told my brother at one point that in order to get over hard things, I feel like I had to kill the person who was hurting, right? I had to kill this person in me, the person I was who was hurting. I had to kill that person because that's the only way that I could move past it, right? I became unrecognizable. The thing that those people liked, that's not me anymore. I'm something completely different. I'm something completely new, right? I have a completely new level of discipline, a completely new understanding of life. I read all these books now, right? I do all these different things. I run, I play tennis. That's not who I was. That's not who I was at all. I'm not saying, and that's not knocking on the person who I was. I was a great person, right? I think something that I told my mom when I sent her my resolutions is she said, I like all your resolutions, but I don't think you need to be a better boyfriend because the person you were with constantly told me how good of a person you were, right? They constantly told me how loving you were and how caring you were. And I think that person who was loving and caring is just, they're a new person now. I'm still loving, I'm still caring, and I'm still passionate, I'm still all these things, right? As I talked about, all the letters I was written, it was always passion, passion, passion. It was a common theme, passion, loving, caring, all those things. But the person that I was with them is no longer the person I am. And I think that's important in heartbreak is you need to become something new. You need to become the thing that loves you, right? And I think that's the thing that Kierkegaard kind of encompasses is, in my opinion, if I'm interpreting the theory, if you're living forward and you're understanding in reverse, you need to understand the things that have happened to you, right? And you need to recognize that it's okay to change and it's okay to do new things. And I think even for myself, I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I was just like, this person that you knew, these people that you knew are not coming back. And if they do, they do. But they are not coming back. And I think what I realized there is they're not coming back to the person that I am at that moment now. They're not coming back to this sorry, sad individual. They're not coming back to that. Well, what they'll come back to is a happy, vibrant, new person. And then you can make the determination of, do I let those people back in my life? Then you can decide, are these the people for me? But until then, if you can't change for yourself and you can't love who you are right now, then what is the point? What is the point? Then I would question if you're actually understanding the things that have happened to you. right? If you've actually processed the things that have happened to you. And I think part of understanding is processing. I think you could almost use them synonymously in this term, right? You have to process bad things that happen to you. You have to process good things that happen to you, right? You have to process these things. You have to let them hit you. You have to let yourself feel emotions. And I know this has turned kind of into a lecture, but I say these things because I say them for myself as well. Hearing me say them helps, right? Because I think sometimes in this feeling, as I talked about earlier, of always feel like I need to be doing more, always feel like I'm not doing enough, sometimes you just need to slow down and let yourself be human. We make mistakes. We have bad days. We get sad sometimes. That doesn't make us any less beautiful than we are. Because to me, really, the biggest sin you could ever commit is giving up yourself and destroying yourself for nothing. I mean, that's the biggest sin right there. Like, you're giving yourself up for nothing. You're not becoming something that's different. You're ruminating. You're sitting there and thinking, oh my gosh, who am I? What am I going to be? And I think that you're sinning against yourself. You can't do that. Those are just things you can't do. And I think something to sum up, kind of how I'm feeling, is as I have become this new person, as I have progressed, as I have experienced the ironic tragedy of life in full, right? In full. Because I think I was living this life of such lavish and such comfort that I was never understanding, I was never processing the things that were happening to me. And I kind of got screwed for it, right? Because then I was forced to process everything at the same time. And it was like getting shot. Literally, it was like I took a shotgun. Wow, that was crazy. I just felt everything, right? All of these things that maybe I should have been doing earlier. I felt all of them. And I think something that kind of resonates with me at this moment is, my past self. I would always talk about with my past partner, about the kids we wanted, what we were going to name them. They have two names. I won't name them, but I know what they are. And looking back, I'm sure I'll know what they are. I'll give the first letters. Let's say E and J. That was the two names that we had thought about. And I used to think about that every day. I used to think about being a dad and having a family and doing all these things. And I realized that's a wildly optimistic thing to think about, but I think that's how comfortable I was and how much I wanted that thing to become true, right? It was almost me manifesting it. And as I become this new person, those things are great. Those are things I still want. But I no longer think about having kids. If anything, I think about having a table for two, right? I think about meeting someone new and falling in love again. Those are the things I think about. And I think part of what I realized is it's okay to think that I was thinking about these children and having this family and having this wife and doing all these things. But God love, I'm 22, right? I'm in the prime of life, you could say. I'm sure there's a psychology theory out there. Erickson's theory, I'm sure, has something about it. There's a theory called the prime of life, I'm pretty sure. But for me, this is the prime of life, right? And I think something that you have to do in that is, take a chill pill and slow down, right? Why am I looking for what I'm going to do in 10 years and have children and I'm going to be married and it's going to be great when all I need to care about is what I'm going to do today and what's my plans for tomorrow and who is going to be the table for two? What am I going to do? How am I going to impress my partner? And those are things that I always thought about, but I think I was always preoccupied with bigger, nuanced things of life. And not saying those are things you shouldn't think about, but if those things are overshadowing the person you have now and the person you are now and the relationship you're in now, that I think is negative. And in the future, I don't know who I'm going to meet, but I'm sure I'm going to meet someone completely wonderful, right? I know I will. And even if I start the new book, then I'm sure that will be wonderful as well. But I think what I want to make a goal to is in this understanding of my past and understanding life in reverse. Just taking it slow is so important. Just taking it slow is giving back to yourself. And I think in today's society, we constantly think about, I need to do the next thing. I need to do the next thing. I need to do the next thing. I constantly feel that. I constantly feel that. What can I be doing next? But I just think taking it slow is the cheat code. It's the hack. It's what they don't want to tell you, because if you take it slow, I mean, Jesus Christ, you might actually enjoy yourself. You might enjoy life. And sometimes I feel like that's not what people want you to do. Sometimes I feel like people want you to be as miserable as they are. And that's a trap. You can't let them do that. Yeah, so I know this was a long video, and I know I kind of rambled on, and I know this is a new space, and I know the lighting kind of sucks. I really hope the audio is good, and I really hope there's no background noise. I think I kind of figured out editing and doing all that stuff, so that should be fine. Yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do for video 5. I have not really thought about it, but I think this is a video that was very important, and I think it's something I needed to get off my chest, right? It's just something that I think is really important to me. And now that I think of it, maybe I'll make my next video about special things to me. I don't know. Maybe we'll make it about like people's eyes, like my eyes or something. I don't know. I don't know what I'll do. I'll have to think about it. But until then, like I said, today is Monday, January 6th of 2025. I think this is my first video of 2025, but I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, I'll see you in the next. This was the epitome of what I want to get out of these videos, right? It almost felt like a therapy session, but sometimes that's what you need. So yeah, I will see you in the next video.